InvestorIdeas.com podcast.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com podcast, looking at cannabis news, stocks to watch, as well as insights from thought leaders and experts. In today's podcast, we're going to be looking at a few public company announcements from C21 Investments Incorporated, trading on the CSE as CXXI and the OTCQB as CXXIF, as well as Village Farms International Incorporated, trading on the NASDAQ and the TSX as VFF. Relievium Technologies Incorporated, trading on the TSX Venture as RLV and the OTC as RLLVF, as well as WeedMD Incorporated, trading on the TSX Venture as WMD and the OTCQX as WDDMF. As well, just a heads up, there are a lot of earnings reports that came out last week as well as this week, and more to be coming out next week. We did a great interview with Matt Markevich, which was released yesterday, which discussed a lot of these earnings results. And I will be doing a roundup this Friday as well as next week, discussing a lot of those earnings reports in minor detail, including links to all the different earnings reports and companies that are involved as well. So if you are trying to look for all that information, that'll be coming out this Friday as well as one next week as well. But definitely something to pay attention to over the next 2 weeks, as a series of earnings for a lot of the larger scale cannabis companies will be still coming out. First, starting with C21 Investments Incorporated today, who announced record revenue at its Nevada dispensaries for the second quarter ending July 31st, as well as for the month of July. Now, the quarter two retail revenue sets records for a quarter, surpassing the previous high in the quarter three of last year. And the July sets a monthly revenue record for the first month over $3 million at Silver State dispensaries, and the best month ever at the Fernley dispensary. 98.5 thousand retail revenue run per day in July, with a previous record of 96.5 thousand in June of 2020, and a $63 average ticket size in the quarter two. And again, those are all based in US dollars as well. So company CEO and President Sonny Newman commented, "We're very pleased with the record quarter two and July performance at our Nevada dispensaries, which is a testament to the dedication of our team. We're proud to be celebrating our 5th anniversary as Nevada's first licensed dispensary, and despite beginning the quarter under state-mandated delivery-only sales, we responded quickly and began operating 3 complementary sales channels in May as restrictions eased, and our strong and loyal customer base continues to mitigate the impact of the pandemic at our Nevada businesses. While both dispensaries are performing exceptionally well, our Fernley dispensary continues to significantly exceed expectations, with July recording its best month of sales to date." And in the second quarter, C21 has continued to optimize its Oregon operations. As of June, several non-core Oregon assets are subject to third-party management agreements and nearing the completion of sale, which will generate cash and reduce costs and liabilities from mid-June onwards. And with operations streamlined in Oregon and robust revenue and EBITDA margins at our Silver State dispensary, C21 is working to deepen its presence in Nevada as we continue to make progress in establishing our debt facility. As reported in our year-end financials, our Nevada dispensaries generated an average of approximately $16 million in revenue and $6 million in adjusted EBITDA per dispensary, with the ability to replicate and scale both our profitable dispensary model and our vertically integrated operations in Nevada, with 80% of our cultivation and production facilities still untapped. We do expect to build on quarter two's record retail revenue and enhance shareholder value moving forward, said Mr. Newman. So obviously the Nevada market I've talked about a couple times in the past, and more recently of a market that was severely impacted by the COVID-19 closures. Similar to California, both those markets were obviously and still are the biggest sort of rec markets in the US and really in the world right now as far as population density within those markets. And both of them suffered quite heavily from heavy closures, and a lot of the businesses were not quick enough to adapt, and some of the policies within their states were very difficult to adhere to right away. Now we're starting to see a heavy rebound in Nevada for July, it seems. A lot of these other companies, not just C21 Investments, saw high sales, if not record sales. You can also look, Flower One was another company out of Nevada that reported quite high sales for the month of July. And so it does seem that as more things are opening up, that demand is skyrocketing. And again, as we're now starting to see some of these areas in California and Nevada open up for tourism and the businesses start to go back into operation, I would expect those sales to continue to go up. And potentially this year could be, even though it has had a lot of stalls and slowdowns for Nevada, could be a record year for them for a lot of these dispensaries, as again, now there is all these delivery methods established, and there is going to be a large group of the population that's hungry for tourism and hungry to go to Nevada and to Vegas. And I do expect there to be some sort of a boom. So maybe hopefully this continues, not just through July, but into August and September. I don't see it going all through the winter, but at least for the next 2 to 3 months, you could have steady sales and other record sales coming out of Nevada as well. Next, looking at Village Farms International, who announced it's executed a binding agreement to acquire 6.6% of Australia based Altum International, one of the Asia Pacific's leading cannabinoid platforms, subject to the completion of certain conditions, which are expected to be finalized in the next several weeks. Now, Altum's mission is to bring a life changing benefits of cannabinoids with a focus on CBD to consumers across the Asia Pacific region through a comprehensive platform for the large scale importation, distribution, and marketing of CBD, composed of 3 channels with an overriding focus on regulatory compliance for each specific country market. Proprietary consumer brands, so fully owned consumer brands currently consisting of Felix and Co., Kind Cannabis, and Subami. Commercial inputs, so a range of cost competitive, compliant, and effective premium CBD ingredients through its Life brand, as well as retail sales and educational and experiential stores for both Altum and partner products. Now, Altum has initially focused on opportunities in Hong Kong, which is one of the most progressive attitudes and regulatory regimes for CBD in the Asia Pacific region. It has already launched a broad range of CBD products under the Felix & Co. brand to very favorable customer feedback and strong initial sales traction. Now, in its commercial input channel, Altum is supplying craft brewers for CBD-infused beer, as well as market-wide coffee chains and juice bars for beverages and edibles, and is advancing discussions for supply agreements to provide inputs for a range of other products, including pet food, cosmetics, and spa products for hotels. Now, in June of 2020, Altum opened a boutique cafe and retail concept store in Hong Kong named Found, Asia's first dedicated CBD consumer outlet. And Altum plans to pursue its business strategy throughout the Asia Pacific region, including but not limited to Greater China, Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Australia, and New Zealand, with the goal to be commercially active in at least 3 additional countries in the next 12 months. Now, Altum is also pursuing high THC medical cannabis opportunities in Australia and New Zealand, where medical cannabis is already legal in both countries, and intends to pursue recreational cannabis opportunities in each of those countries should legalization occur. Altum is well positioned to capitalize on the medical cannabis opportunity in New Zealand with a 49% interest in Kariki Pharma Limited. Kariki is a New Zealand domiciled medical cannabis company focused on creating a suite of pharmaceutical quality medical cannabis for New Zealand, Australia, Asian, and European patients for export markets. On the heels of our recent investment in the Netherlands, our partnership with Altum represents another meaningful step to leverage our 3 decades of experience in vertically integrated intensive agriculture, as well as our cannabis success in Canada for international CBD and cannabis opportunities, said Michael DeGiglio, the CEO of Village Farms International. Now, Village Farms is at a place where, with well-established North American operations continuously refined and enhanced for optimized performance and growth, we're able to turn our attention to strategic early-stage initial opportunities where CBD and cannabis are being legalized in our pursuit of well-researched capital allocation for the general and outsized long-term returns. With approximately 4.5 billion people, more than 4 times that of the US, Canada, and Europe combined, the Asia-Pacific market represents one such sizable but nascent opportunity, with the addressable market for cannabis alone forecasted to reach 10 billion US by 2024. Now, Altum is an outstanding organization at the very forefront of the emerging CBD industry in the Asia-Pacific region and represents a capital-efficient means by which to participate in this significant opportunity, as well as the legal, medical, and potential legal recreational cannabis markets in Australia and New Zealand. Village Farms International focusing on international expansion, obviously now focused much more so on the Asia Pacific region. Altum definitely has some very lofty goals there of the markets they're planning on entering, even going as far as to get into a multiple of 2 more or 3 additional countries in the next 12 months. And the Asia Pacific market is one that is definitely very tantalizing for a lot of investors and companies, but so far hasn't really yielded much fruit. Even Australia and New Zealand have really been struggling with their cannabis industries. The medical markets there are still very underserved and have a lot of difficulties with distribution and just the overall model of the sort of operations there. And then looking as well at actual sort of Southeast Asia as well as mainland China and Japan. Those are all countries that have really, really difficult policies surrounding cannabis, especially THC cannabis. CBD does seem to be picking up some momentum there, especially when it comes to health and wellness products. So I would pay attention to Altum's little boutique store that they have in Hong Kong right now, and how that does, if that expands over the next coming months. That would be very interesting to find out. Hong Kong obviously is a very interesting market to be jumping into right now, and there's not a lot of CBD or cannabis competition within Asia Pacific markets right now. So that is the advantage of Altum right now, and also for Village Farms with investing in them. But I do see that, again, this is going to be a market that's probably going to be very tough to penetrate, probably take more than a couple months, and is closer to a few years away. But you never know. There has been a lot of massive developments over the last couple of months, and you never know what could change within the next year. But so far, this seems like very similar to the psychedelic industry, in that there's huge potential on the horizon. But as far as when you're going to actually start seeing fruit forward from this, probably not going to be for another couple of years. Next, looking at Relievium Technologies, who announced a secured license and patented science-based nutraceutical formulation that addresses major points of viral invasion, replication, and toxicities, developed by Dr. Dana F. Flavin, an internationally recognized expert in immune modulation and the prevention and treatment of viruses and cancer. Now, the patented formulation developed by Dr. Dana F. Flavin will be marketed under the company's Bioganics brand, which was developed to work with multiple pathways to combat viral infections, including COVID-19, by increasing the antiviral defense while decreasing the replication and toxicity of the virus. Now, according to Dr. Dana Flavin, the most important aspect of the multiple pathway approach is synergy, a process in which substances cooperate to reach a combined effect that is greater than the sum of their separate effect. Now, synergy is not only important in the development of specific effective formulation, but also as an adjunct to conventional drug therapy. Now, the patented formulation was designed to address the viral infections through a synergistic interaction of several natural ingredients that amplify effects of the ingredients working with enhanced supportive mechanisms, which show greater efficacies based on their expansion of the biochemical process and pharmacological activities. Now, this includes NAC, olive leaf extract and licorice root, zinc, elderberry, vitamin C, and lemon balm, cherry extract, rose hips, and nicotinilamine, as well as a few other compounds. Now, the company is partnered with a licensor, a Canadian company engaged in the research and development of proprietary nutraceutical products and intellectual properties and other related formulas for the health and wellness and nutraceutical industries and the general public. Now, the licensor has been granted the company an initial exclusive license under the US, German, and Colombia to use the licensed product and the licensor intellectual property to have manufactured, and sell the licensed product. Now, licensor grants licenses and the right to the IP rights and marks through a base revenue share per unit sold of $3. The CEO of Relievium, Aurelio Usech, stated, "We're extremely excited to have secured the exclusive license for this 100% natural, synergistic, and multi-pathway patented formulation, which we'll be launching in the market over the next months. This is a major addition to the Clear Care product portfolio, adding prevention and immunity support for the Bioganics line of trusted nutraceuticals." Now, Relievium Technologies, I've obviously talked about a lot during this whole COVID-19 pandemic. They're a company that focused early on making sanitation and different health products that were in need, essentially, right away, mainly focusing on just hand sanitizer, but they did make a few other health products as well that were in high demand. And now they've also really focused on a few different products. This isn't the only one that they've released. They have released a few CBD products as well. That are all based off this synergistic approach and are all based on boosting the immune system and combating virus influence sort of early on. I do think that this is the smarter play for a lot of these cannabis companies, is to focus on preventative health measures as opposed to trying to come up with some sort of COVID-19 cure. There has been a few companies that are looking more along that route, but I think that the smarter play and the safer play for them as a company, as well as to not get caught up in the misinformation that is being provided about COVID-19, that's sort of a dicey PR nightmare to be jumping into. I would expect that the safer play for a lot of these companies is going to be going more the Relievium way, which is, again, focusing on immune boosting products, focusing on general health and wellness, and sort of preventative measures you can take early on, or products you could take early on that will just help boost your immune system and make you less susceptible to certain viruses and diseases. There also, again, are the sort of after effect products that have also been coming out from the cannabis industry, which are helped or aimed to help treat and alleviate the symptoms of COVID-19 or of some other viruses that are out there. I think that's also a smarter play. Again, I don't think you're going to see some sort of COVID cure come from a cannabinoid based product. I do think that you're going to have lots of cannabinoid based products, though, that really help alleviate the symptoms and also help aid in the prevention of getting these diseases. And Relievium definitely does seem to be ahead of the curve with regards to that. They have a couple of products in the pipeline, this now being another one. So it'll definitely depend on whether they can get these products sort of out into the market and enough awareness about them, as not only is the cannabis industry making tons of products to try and combat these viruses that are out there right now, but also every other company is as well. There's a ton of products coming to the market right now from the pharmaceutical sector that are all focused on immune boosting, that are all focused on anti-inflammation, other such products. So there is a huge competition within this market, but again, Relievium has at least made a couple of smart plays, and it does seem like a lot of these products could be very beneficial to the public. Whether or not they are, it'll just be a case of whether or not they actually are aware of them and have access to them. Lastly, for today, looking at Weed MD, who announced it's entered into an exclusive licensing, manufacturing, and distribution agreement with premium U.S.-based cannabis wellness house Technology Holdings, owner of Mary's Brands and the acclaimed product line Mary's Medicinals. Now, under the terms of the agreement, as Mary's sole Canadian partner, WeedMD will manufacture a suite of Mary's Medicinals products in-house with its own input biomass at its state-of-the-art extraction hub, CXX Industries, later this year. And WeedMD will also market, sell, and distribute Mary's Medicinals products under Canadian provincial adult use and direct-to-consumer medical channels as it looks to expand new cannabis offerings to address the underserved wellness and medical market segment. Widely recognized for its innovative portfolio of delivery methods, Mary's suites of cannabis products includes transdermal gels and patches and topicals. As we move into the next level of product development, it's imperative that we strategically partner with established brands that share our core values, and Mary Brands offers a superior product line that's backed by a team truly dedicated to ensuring the quality, integrity, and efficiency of their product offerings, said Angelo Tselbas, the CEO of WeedMD. We're proud to be selected as Mary's exclusive Canadian producer and distributor, and with our cultivation platform and CX extraction operations fully ramped up, there's an added pride of developing these renowned products in-house as we expand with new cannabis formats into a lucrative yet underserved consumer segment. So I've talked a lot about this in the past, and WeedMD has done this a few different times. Not only them, but many Canadian companies, which is bringing in a well-established U.S. brand into the Canadian market with the hopes of sort of cornering certain segments of the 2.0 offerings within Canada right now. There's lots of these brands coming up from the U.S. right now. And I think you're going to continue to see this trend literally probably into the next year or two, if not a continuing theme just for the industry. And that until federal legalization changes within the U.S. and until there's a little bit loosening of certain restrictions in some areas or some regards when it comes to importation, exportation, and all of that federally licensed stuff under the U.S., I think you're going to continue to see that the U.S. market becomes this sort of hub of innovative products that then get tested into broader markets. Obviously, there still is huge potential within the U.S. markets. Population density has shown that. California, Nevada, lots of different markets in the U.S. as far as the states go have huge potential for sales and revenue. But I think that in general, because of the overall regulations surrounding the Canadian market, that is the goal for a lot of these companies' products, is to get them into the Canadian market, because that means easy expansion into other international markets such as the EU. So I do expect that you're going to continue to see U.S. product brands get picked up and then redistributed into the Canadian market. So far, there has been a good strategy, and a lot of those brands have remained their traction from the U.S. market into the Canadian market. And as well, right now, as so many of these Canadian companies struggle, especially as COVID-19 has slowed down the regulatory process and also getting products to market. A lot of these companies now are realizing that they can go a different route, which is going through their U.S. partners and bringing these products to market faster, and also having them tried and tested, which is a big assistance for any of these companies. That's one of the things for the cannabis industry when you're looking at the Canadian market that's become a huge, huge problem, is that a lot of the products that are going out to the market don't seem to really have any product testing or any consumer testing when it comes to, are people going to be buying these products and which consumers are looking for them. Whereas when you're getting these brands that have already been sold and established in different US state markets, you have the consumer feedback, you have the evidence there to show what this product is, who it's going to sell to, what price points you should be looking at, and what the competition is going to be. So I think that that's the big advantage to bringing these US-based products into the Canadian market. There still hasn't really been a lot of these topicals or salves that have been available within the Canadian market, so that could be a good advantage for WeedMD if they can get this product out in time. But that's the big difficulty for all these Canadian companies and the Cannabis 2.0 products, is that a lot of tall talk about these amazing products that are going to be coming to market, and very few of them actually out on the recreational market or even the medical market within Canada so far. So it still is sort of a race for those first couple of products to get to market. And again, until we have a large inventory of products within the Canadian market, you're not going to really have any understanding of which products or which formats really stand out and go to the extreme. As again, the difficulty with looking at US markets is that there is an abundance of competition. There's also differences in regulations, so some products can't be sold in other countries or other parts of the world that can be sold in certain US states, and that's a big difficulty as well. That's all for today's podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated's CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.